Hey, let's talk about episode 6 of the Vampire Lestat. First off, we get a good view of the coffin that Lestat sleeps in. It's a new one, right? Is it Hastings? He called Louis Hastings coffin. The brand of the coffin, I guess, or the designer maybe is Hastings, the carpenter. I don't know. But it looks like a big old ottoman. You would think that um, a rock star vampire might want at least a queen sized coffin. This looks like maybe twin size. I don't know. But then again, like even Louis was like saying how he doesn't really use coffins anymore. Like that's just like a old fashioned thing. I think Lestat still tied to some of that old fashioned vampire stuff. But yeah, this episode, um, we get what I wanted from episode was it the first episode where it's pretty much Lestat and Louis hanging out in Montreal. A little bit of a rom com almost, really nice and cozy. For the most maybe for me for like the first third of the episode because really it's kind of like more like a romantic tragedy as usual. So we start off with this is basically after last episode where they turned the bandmates into vampires. So we have Alex, not Alex. Yeah, it is Alex down there as a vampire. He gets no lines in this episode. He just gets some menacing looks. We'll get to that ending. But here he's getting a call from somebody. Mary Rick, it's like, who is this? This is a new character. It's actually Merrick, the witch Merrick. She's like a character from the future books. There's actually a book in the Chronicles of Vampire series by Anne Rice called Merrick. I think it comes after the Armand one. It comes after, it's like maybe the fifth or sixth book in the series. And so that's kind of tying it back to like the witches of Mayfair, the Mayfair witches we're going to get to. So they're setting up that little seance that was a pretty amazing scene, really. But he's getting ready to escape after the big old goodbye concert. But we get to see some of his passports. He's a good look at it. One of his aliases from Canada, Sheridan Blackwood. We see his birthday there, 1992. Still millennial. November. Interesting. Is that is November 7th? I think they might have mentioned his birthday in the books or something. Or I think that what it is that I think his birthday lines up with Anne Rice's husband's birthday. I don't know. But interesting. So he has a few different passports there. And the funny thing here is that he's Louis here. That was a nice little surprise. Louis here. He just they're still exes. They're not completely back together. They're just hanging out. They're friendlier now. It's nice to see. Nice to see that they're friendlier now. And it's just like a very cozy opening. It's Halloween again. I think he said 2 full years since the last since they started the band, the Stop band. Because that was like a Halloween episode as well. And they're getting ready for the big conversion pretty much. And Louis is like, hey, you can't be doing this thing. We got to cancel this this show. It's not a good idea. All these vampires are coming to see the big show. Because I guess he's going to reveal that he's not dead. But I think most people realize, or at least like his biggest fans realize that Lestat has not perished. But I guess his biggest fans are vampires because as we've seen earlier on, like he's gotten some negative reviews on Pitchfork and the like, as he's very sad to look at the reviews. He's like number 68 on the top Billboard. 68. It's not horrible. I mean, at least you're on the Billboard. Top 100. But yeah, so like. So they're getting ready for that, and it's Halloween, and Louis isn't really dressed up as anybody, is he? Is he supposed to be something? I don't think so. And Lestat, of course, is death. Kind of not a little bit of a simple get up there for Halloween, but he's just on his way to the big vampire restaurant. What's interesting here is he does seem to be recognized by people. Like we have this couple of, are these the perhaps the girls from the Shining or something? I don't know. Like the little girls from The Shining, these dresses. I don't know. I get that vibe. They like notice Louis or somebody. Is the extra just did they were out of character there or something? I don't know, but it's funny. I don't know if that means anything. She waves. I think she just waves at she notices that it's Lestat. You know, I see you. And then there's other guy in the ghost polka dot ghost sheet gives them a little flyer about the 5 laws of the vampire. So I believe these might, maybe like everyone around here is like a lot of vampires around here. I mean, he does mention how there's a bunch of vampires around. So like maybe most of these people are vampires just hanging out on Halloween. Because this looks like a serious vampire who's like about obeying laws, and he specifically gives it to them. It's like he knows them. This could also be part of the crew that are going to assassinate these two, as we're going to get to at the end. Could this be, I don't think it's Alex. We saw Alex before down the street, but it's interesting. Maybe the person under that ghost sheet will reveal themselves next episode. Who knows? And so conveniently, Louis, of course, has a restaurant nearby Lestat's place, and it seems to be a vampire restaurant. So it looks like at this point, you know, the vampires have proliferated. There's so many of them. They got their own. I mean, I guess Louis always had like vampire clubs, but it feels like we're overflowing now with vampires, as we're going to see also in the a fan of Lestat screams out of their car. Before that, we have, of course, another interview session. This is the interview of the vampire show. Now we got Louis and Lestat together for the interview for their first time, right? We never had them together. That's right. But they're playing coy. They're not really giving too much info. They're kind of just playing around with Daniel, but Daniel has some ulterior motives here. They do notice he's got a burnt face there, a red tan, but then they get like a nice meal, I guess, a bloody drink from this person. Feels a bit weird, but she's voluntarily giving that drink. I guess she's like getting paid a bunch. So they share a drink. It is a cool little device though, how it pours out in all 3 cups. This thing here, I imagine you can use that for making wine. I wonder if you could, you just put some grapes in there and smush them. I mean, you would have to, of course, ferment the wine, but or it's a good juicer probably situation. Anyway, so that's all nice and dandy. So what's Daniel up to? We're gonna discover later on. But yeah, we get this nice little scene with them in the back of the car here. Again, giving off these more rom-com vibes, and I like this. They're so good together. I like them both on screen, and they're kind of like bickering at each other a little bit, about their past. It's kind of like a summation of like, all the things they've done to each other, and they're kind of like reminiscent, but also kind of like airing out some grievances and such. And then we get that the fans on right beside them, And at first it was like, are these just regular people? Because if you look at, you don't see their fangs yet. But as we've established in the show, the vampires, they retract their fangs. Or I think it's like, from what I remember someone saying, perhaps behind the scenes, is that it's an illusion or something, where like their fans they only show their fangs when when they want to, but they're always there. Like they use mind tricks to like showcase, to like make their fangs disappear to humans probably. But I don't know, I guess to each other too, because we don't ever really see them kind of grow. I think we see that, like, there's other vampire shows and movies where we see the fangs kind of like grow out. They kind of just appear in this show sometimes. So those are definitely vampires. And so I guess it's just, again, kind of indicating like how, like, here's the one right here. We can see their fangs too, I think. That there are so many vampires. These look like very young vampires, right? Like they were just turned like a month ago or something. And they wanted to join the Vampire Lestat club, and so talking about like the pair stuff and how like he would appear as a spirit in the stories of Louis that he was telling Daniel in Paris. And again, a little bit of a spat here where Louis asked, did you ever imagine me? Did you ever see me in your visions? Me walking around. And of course, Lestat's a little more of a closed book, and he just laughs about it a little bit. But he does come around and says that, yeah, he does sometimes sees him. And of course, we know that for sure because in previous episodes, we've seen him from his point of view, Lestat's point of view, seeing different people like Nikki and Louis standing around. So we know that he loves Louis just as much as Louis loves him. And let's see what's so I'm a monster. So the big thing here is like, why did you do the whole thing with Claudia, and like the Antoinette thing. How he made her cut her finger off, and she was like, oh, she mostly did that on her own. And like it was pretty much all like he was saying, it was basically to get you out of your depression, but also to like kind of prod at you, and it's like it was still like pretty mean and evil and stuff, but like he's like, well, I'm just a monster. That's an excuse. It's kind of this excuse for the rest of the episodes, like I'm just a monstrous person, and this kind of episode is, some of the little petty vindictive things he does sometimes, and like both of them too, like it's kind of what this episode's about really. By the end, like them coming to realize that like, hey, as we're gonna get to, like they have to work on themselves a little bit, it's kind of a therapy session this episode really. So that's interesting. But yeah, I like this. And then we get to their rehearsal, and we have Louis at last meeting Sophia / Gabrielle. Gabrielle is looking good. She's always looking good. She does like to always wear like black though, huh? I mean, it's very vampire-y and stuff, but I feel like she's a little bit one note with her outfits. Although I don't know if we've seen her with the low cut before. But anyways, so like, so these are all vampires. And I did wish we would see, I wanted to see more of the band as vampires. I feel like we needed like a scene of like Salamander, TC, and Alex just hanging about, doing vampire-y things. They're kind of still in the background. Maybe we'll see a little more of that, later. But yeah, for sure, this scene is all about really the tension between Gabriella and Louis here. The two fledglings of Lestat and lovers as well. So this is a good song. This is a good brutal love song here. that's coming up. Of course, they're talking about the upcoming concert. Like Louis like, oh, you probably shouldn't do it. Should I be there? And like she's like, well, maybe you shouldn't because it could get dangerous. Does Gabriella know something that we don't know? She doesn't seem to be on Team Armand. She's like a third party so it's like, I wonder if she has some other plans going on here. Because she was being positioned as like the antagonist, and she sort of kind of maybe somewhat is still, but definitely by the end of the episode and even last episode, like Armand and now Daniel Malloy are like the big baddies of our protagonist, our Louis and Lestat. So this is the great song here, Savage Love. And of course, it's like later on, of course, Lestat reveals that most of the songs are about Louis, and here it's very clear. It's again kind of reminiscent of one of the songs we saw earlier on. Was it like episode 2 where he floats up into the balcony where Louis is standing and shows him the book he has, the interview with the vampire book he was holding on to, to give it to him, like, hey, look at all the notes I wrote, and like that was a contentious moment in their relationship. But here, like, it's almost like a sort of like, let's get back together vibe, let's get back together part of the rom-com. And Gabriella notices, she is jealous, here we have the love triangle going on here. And so it's nice. And then we get some more stuff. And then of course, Louis still dating Lemuel, Lamb, Lemmy, Lick Lamb, Lestat says. It's another L word. I wonder if he's dating Lem because it's also the same start of Lestat's name, Lem, I don't know, it could be some kind of subliminal thing. And so he sends him the link to a clip from the new interview with the Vampire Lestat documentary by Daniel that he's making, of course. And he's curious. I don't think he watches it yet. I guess he watches it when he's in the car later, before Lestat arrives. But he's gonna be like, let's talk in the car in a second. But Gabriella wants a little word with Lestat because she's feeling like she's being left out. It's like, hey, like, I thought I was your favorite, and we get a kiss here. Of course, Lestat is like, So, here, again, we're like starting from really maybe a couple episodes ago, where we have seen Lestat kind of distance himself a little bit more from Gabriella and feeling a little bit, more reluctant about it. And perhaps guilty about it, but also maybe realizing that, there's perhaps some kind of certain type of toxicity to it, even though he's defending the monstrousness of it to Louis later. Like, I feel like we're building up to that, like the idea that, yeah, like he's gonna break it up with Gabriella pretty soon here, if he hasn't already here. And definitely Lestat is placing down some hints here when Alex walks by again. We see Alex like just giving these looks, like it's definitely different for the foreshadowing for what Alex is gonna do later. So he walks by, Alex does, and that's a cue for Lestat to be like, hey, maybe you should spend some more time with your other son, kind of, because he implies that she's the one that converted, that sired Alex the vampire. It's like, you should spend time with Alex, and of course she did that just because it was in the moment they asked for it, and she of course she doesn't have that same connection that she has with Lestat, but she is jealous. Don't forget to pack. She's getting ready to, I guess, to pack to the woods, because he says they're going to go to the woods with a bunch of, that's what the concert is, I guess. That's going to be a cool concert. It is nice to, like, I went to a concert in the woods once, and it was pretty cool. It is to nature and music is always fun. So that's gonna be cool. And so then we get back in the car, and he's found out something. So in the clip that Daniel put up on the interwebs there, even him and Armand are introducing the clip too. And Armand reveals, guess what? Sophia is Gabriella, his mom. And that's going to be a big bombshell. That's like intended to, of course, upset Lestat and maybe cause more tension among the fans of Lestat. But the thing is that, again, a lot of his fans are, into the whole vampire thing or vampires themselves. And like, I'm wondering, like, in the greater vampire community, what is the consensus on the whole incest situation? Like, are more vampires, like, because again they're like otherworldly and whatever, like, do they not see it as a big faux pas to be incestuous? But so maybe this might be more directed towards the human fans to maybe create more tension between humans and vampires, and perhaps get the humans to revolt against the vampires. I don't know, but I think it's mostly to upset Lestat, and of course it definitely upsets Louis, which is this is a pretty big lie, shameful lie, of course, that Louis has hidden from him. Lestat has hidden from Louis, and from everybody. Of course, if he wasn't ashamed of it, he wouldn't have hidden it, right? So I guess that kind of indicates too that even in the vampire world, it's still like something to be shameful of. And so, they get into argument here, and Lestat gives him an anatomy lesson. Louis just was saying how, like, he was in his mom's vagina and stuff, but like, the uterus and then the vagina, how it is, and then he throws up because he's obviously like feeling all kinds of guilt and shame, and throws up blood, and so this is a big, pretty scene, and it did seem a little bit kind of a bit maybe extreme from Louis to be so upset here, but it also kind of makes sense. Of course, he himself has had his creepy moments with the so-called faux Claudia. What did Claudia, I think that's what he called the fake Claudia Lestat, and that's what he points that out, that he didn't call him sick for that, and yet Louis is calling him sick for sleeping with his mother. But he's explaining, he's like, hey, like, vampire, it's different, she's something else. She was my mother, but now she's the vampire Gabriella. So that's another thing. That's like another way, like, I guess he justifies it, and I guess tries to clarify, like, hey, like, that's what makes it different, because once you become a vampire, you become something else. You like kind of almost lose your previous being, who you were before. You're no longer human. And again, he's kind of pointing out how Louis is kind of attached too much to his humanity here, when in fact he himself is just as monstrous, but it's still freaking weird, dude. It was your mom. And so, yeah, but luckily, like, for the sake of the rom-com here, and because I do like the pairing between these two weirdos here, that this kind of just, it doesn't go too long, this little debate here, this little fight, and they kind of like sizzle down by the next scene at the bar here, and he does hold on to him. It's like, hey, it's fine, all right, let's get you a drink, and it's an interesting way of how they drink here. They mix in their blood with the beer here, and I guess this must be just a regular bar, not a vampire bar. So then they kind of like sizzle down, and they're like, okay, let's clarify, like, tell me the truth of what's going on. and he explains it more. And yeah, like I feel like, yeah, it's weird, but I guess like overall, I feel like the show has like explained it and articulated enough, the reasons behind why Lestat and Gabrielle are together, and I feel like next episode will probably get, the more psychological therapy trauma conversation between him and Gabriella, Lestat and Gabriella, and that will probably close the book there on their relationship. And I feel like, Louis being a bit, it's nice that he is a bit more understanding here now, of that, but it would be nice. It would have been interesting to see if Louis maybe would, have said something more about like maybe there's some sort of abusive, power dynamics here that your so-called mother, was, maybe it's groomed you in a way, even though you're a vampire, like, I don't know, like maybe something like that could have been, but then that would have made a whole big thing. That would probably maybe that might come in next episode, but that's this scene. And there's like, I saw the skeleton here, and I was like, what is this? But it's Halloween, so for a second I was like, is this a real skeleton? Is this a freaking vampire bar where like, but no, I think it's just like a decoration for Halloween. We got Halloween decorations. It's not like a burnt up vampire or anything. And yeah, so then they're like, they're discussing the cancellation of the event, and this whole time, like, I think, they kind of imply that it's the witch, the appointment that they have, but it's also a bit vague because you kind of are wondering like, oh, are they talking about canceling the concert, because that's kind of what Louis was saying before too. But then they were mentioning, I think early on, they're like, oh, the he does mention the witch and how Louis doesn't like witches and stuff. But I feel like they're leaving out some stuff. Like, did something happen with Louis and the witches at some point? Maybe maybe like when he was in Louisiana. I feel like that's like indicating something, that some kind of deleted scene or something, or some incident with witches. But of course, it's kind of connecting it also to the Mayfair witches, which is the spin-off series, or just the companion series. The Mayfair witches, of course, also were living in New Orleans, which is a side story book series that is connected to the Vampire Chronicles as well. And so we're gonna get a little bit of that here, and that's really what they're talking about. Like, maybe we should cancel the meeting with the witch, because that's what they're doing. But yeah, what I was saying is that was kind of ambiguous. Like, oh, what are they talking about exactly? In exactly that, But then he says like, or he says we should cancel. Then he at last Lestat agrees, like, yeah, we should probably cancel. But then he says or, and like, I guess indicating that we're not, but I wonder if like they decided to change the plans a little bit. Did the or, when he says or, like, was that indicating that he's like, let's do something a little different than we were? Like, they're gonna not summon her but do something else, maybe just talk to her? I don't know. Like the seance thing, I don't know. I feel like it was mostly just, or let's do it anyways, because it could be a therapy session. We were already having a therapy session with each other. Might as well have a therapy session with Claudia. And so that's kind of what they're doing here. And we have Merrick Mayfair. And so Merrick, of course, I mentioned before, she is a character from the later books, and there's a whole book named after her. And so she's, I guess she's a Mayfair, right? She's related to those. They do mention other characters. They mentioned that in like earlier scene, Lestat had met the other Mayfair clan. He mentioned somebody, one of the like antagonist Mayfair characters from the series, the Mayfair Witches. So he says he met them at some point. So maybe and I think they're doing it. I think they're definitely doing a season 3 of the Mayfair Witches, so we might see cameo from Lestat, in that season maybe. Who knows? We did get a cameo from the vampire, the kid that Lestat converted to vampirism. Back in season 2, we saw when he went back to New Orleans during the hurricane. That vampire character was cameoed in the Mayfair Witches. So we might see some more crossover there. But we haven't seen this character before in that season, in that show. But yeah, so they're trying to connect it, but also it's like you don't really need to watch the other show, because you get the gist, and I'm wondering, like, I'm assuming I haven't read the witch books, but like I'm wondering if they do a lot of voodoo magic in that series, because it is like very voodoo witchcraft. She references, right, a particular spirit from voodoo witchcraft. Lord of Blood, huh? Who's that exactly? Papa Legba, that's the one I looked up. Papa Legba is like a spirit that's like that's like in between God and humanity. I guess like they communicate the words from God to humans or something. Says, and Wikipedia says, he stands at a spiritual crossroads and gives or denies permission to speak with the spirit of Guinea, and is believed to speak all human languages. So it's kind of like a medium, right? Or a middle man spirit between the gods and the people. And it seems to be a mix of like, I don't know. I don't know too much about voodoo, but it's a mix of like West African beliefs with some Christianity in there as well. She calls that angels marry as well, like Gabrielle and some other angel. So that's interesting there. And so of course, she's summoning Claudia because they got to close the book on Claudia, because that was the big thing with the season with Louis. He couldn't quite get over that, of course. And now they're gonna get some answers, and it's pretty rough on Merrick here. She chips a whole tooth here as Claudia comes in, because she's like, what are you doing, snatching me into here, yanking me, she says. And but she asked for some more money. It's like, yeah, she's gonna need some more compensation for this. She's got to get her tooth fixed now. And here she comes, Claudia. And so this is a huge scene. It is real rough and real. Claudia comes in, is real vicious, but deservingly so, right? Because they pretty much, Louis made her to comfort himself, and Lestat went along with it, to maintain Louis and to keep Louis, and not lose him, and then all the things they did, they didn't really center her or focus too much on her feelings or desires throughout the whole relationship here, right? So, and then of course, she ended up being burnt on stage, and so she rightfully is like, calling them out on that, and she's really harsh and vicious, but it's it's their comeuppance. This is, they kind of deserve to hear this at this point, and like, and so it's nice, because in a different story or show, this spirit ghost of Claudia would be, wouldn't be voicing, her anger this much. Maybe she would, even in other seance stuff I've seen, like, ghosts can be kind of like malevolent, but they're typically not this articulate about their anger, so you really fear this anger here, and also the weight of like her death really lands on both of them and the viewer more so, because we definitely get this tragic sense that like she's stuck in this limbo pretty much, in like a hellish, pretty much hell, and like not being able to find Madeline, that was like her the big thing here at the end too, like, like they don't even care to call Madeline to come in. And she's like, I guess, super sad. Like she's like in this darkness, nowhereness forever, looking for Madeline and just holding on to this anger, and perhaps maybe this moment could have hopefully given her some type of relief to actually be able to voice, her despair to the ones that she hates most, hates/loves. And she's pretty vicious at Louis too. Like she's saying that he's the one that she hates the most. And I think this is like very much colored with the idea that she's in hell, like that's like has like built up her anger, of course, being there for so long. And I wonder how time works there. Like it could be like a timeless place, in a way. But yeah, she chastises them real harshly, real badly. Gets even Lestat to tear up, and it's such a good roasting that I feel like they kind of like don't dwell on it enough. Like the major thing here with the transition to this ending here, which is a nice, ending for the relationship, or a nice like kind of, conclusion for this episode for their relationship, Louis and Lestat, but it kind of like passes over Claudia's despair a little bit too quickly. I feel like, or I feel like they need to dwell on it a little more. Maybe it would have been better for them to process that, together here on this bench and then end it there instead of where it goes. Because it feels like, but maybe is it somewhat intentional that they kind of get over it so quickly? And it feels a little bit like the tone shift is a little bit tone deaf here. Like, they do like talk about it a little bit, but then almost quickly, like, Louis changes the subject back to Gabriella and stuff. And then they talk about themselves, like, when, this moment is nice when Louis like, maybe, since no one will have us, maybe what if we just get back together and imagine us in the desert, in the trailer park, just hanging out, just away from everybody. What grows in the night, what flowers grow in the night. Couple folding chairs, evening primroses, Lestat says. So Lestat's kind of into it too, So this is a cute little moment, like, oh, maybe you get back together. This is where the rom-com would end the episode of, but of course this is the vampire tragedy, and they're getting a little closer, and like this is the main love story, between these two. Like these are our main love story characters. But I'm still, after that tragic, horrible seance sequence, like I still am thinking about Claudia, like just floating over their shoulders here and like seething, like I don't know, like I feel like they should be also kind of discussing, like, oh, maybe there's something we can do, what if we do another seance and this time call Madeline to come and have some kind of reunion with Madeline and Claudia. Like I feel like they didn't quite, they kind of the therapy session there, like they kind of resolved some of their trauma there by realizing that they were kind of the monsters in that situation against Claudia, and they have to kind of realize, and they do say like, oh, we got to work on ourselves, this Louis says that, and then Lestat says that. So it's like, again, it's still kind of serving their character, the whole Claudia storyline. So I feel like there still needs to be another seance scene or Claudia scene, to really close that loop and really really serve Claudia more, a better justice, for her character. Perhaps we'll get that in next season. if we're going to continue to, it would be nice, to have, Delaney come back again. And we'll see. Maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if perhaps the spirit of Delaney gets summoned, or sorry, the spirit of Claudia gets summoned into Regina, and the Regina come back, and then Madeline's spirit can be summoned into the other actress that was playing Regina Madeline. So maybe that could be a thing. So I feel like they still can close the loop there on her character arc. Definitely deserved. But anyway, so then they get into this, and they're like, yeah, maybe we can escape to the desert together. So then this is kind of also like, again, even Lestat mentions the sitting at the bench moment, where like is reminiscent of episode or season 2, where Lestat and Louis sit at the bench, and of course it's Louis imagining Lestat, as told to Daniel through during the interview, and then Lestat's kind of like melting away in the rain. And so it's kind of like, oh, now the reunion, maybe they can get back together. But then who's that? That's Alex. What is he doing there? He's been waiting this whole time. Like, he's been his own ominous spirit haunting them, and then we have the big twist at the end here, the shock moment of chop, chop, chop. There goes their heads. Damn. Did not see that coming, of course. And who is it? It's Daniel and Armand, working together along with Alex. So we've been building up to this, of course. We've had, remember Armand was at the AA meeting with Alex all those episodes ago. And like they kind of like dropped that, right? So I thought like, okay, that's interesting. Alex is back to drinking. And they didn't really address the whole Armand Alex thing, and they were just holding out on us here for this moment. I feel like maybe they could have included a little bit more to that, but I guess they wanted this shock sequence here, and that's why they kind of just left that ambiguous. And then of course last time we saw Armand and Daniel have the their scenes together, and definitely in that video we understand that they're working together. The video they saw on the phone, and of course even Louis mentions like, hey, like, did you notice that they're in the sun, and we got the clue last time, or the foreshadowing, when Armand was professing his love for Daniel, his vampire monstrous love. And like how he can show him more gifts. He can give him more gifts, more talents, more tricks, more vampire tricks. Of course, Armand is one of the few vampires that we know of that can survive the sunlight. He has that gift. I guess each vampire has different little gifts, and so he taught that gift to Daniel. Of course, he's teaching him. But of course, it's not easy. He's gonna get burnt along the way, so that's why he has that sunburn, because he's been hanging out in the sun with Armand, practicing his dawn walking skills or day walking skills, and that's and then so that's the thing. So like the thing is like, at what point did Daniel and Armand start to work together? So definitely after the scene of the bowling scene, that episode, it was probably after that episode when they were having that conversation outside. So sometime between then and now, they definitely got together and started. But the thing is that what is the motivation here? Like Lestat is I guess also maybe it was probably after Lestat tricked him with the whole interview situation, where he showed him he gave all the answers about, or he like expressed more of his backstory, but then of course it was a trick and it wasn't recorded, and so that really upset Armand. And I think was that the episode upset Daniel, and was that the episode Armand showed up all that combined, he's really has a thing against Lestat now, and Armand has, I guess, convinced him also that Louis was up to some no good during the interview and pretending not to read his mind, but in fact was, or something like. And I guess, there's also the idea that Lestat says that like Daniel kind of has this attitude like, oh, I'm better than you, and he's kind of wanting to prove that like, hey, like, I am better than you. And so that's kind of why he's teaming up with Armand here. Alex, of course, maybe he was convinced by Armand that his brother Larry committed suicide because of Lestat. Lestat and Louis had something to do with it or something. Obviously, it was clear during the whole rehearsals and practices and on the tour that Lestat really didn't like Larry, though I think in the behind the scenes, I think Sam Reed talked about how maybe Lestat, kind of was kind of bullying Larry only because he liked him or something, like he saw that he had this potential or something, and that he was kind of like being critical because he knew towards Larry because he knew he could do better, and maybe he thought he was really good, and he just almost like he was criticizing himself or couldn't criticize his own skills. Lestat couldn't criticize himself, but that he instead would place it onto Larry, something like that. So like maybe like it wasn't truly that Lestat hated Larry, but from the outside it definitely looked like he was bullying Larry a lot. So then the moment that, of course, Larry in last episode jumped in front of the train, which was obviously Armand that did that, was like mind controlled him to do that. But Alex, of course, doesn't know that. So, Alex assumes that Larry committed suicide mostly because of Lestat. So that's why he's against them. And then Louis and he's working with Louis and stuff. So, they're together. So he's going to be okay with killing Louis as well. So that's what they're all working together there. So, but to what end here? Is it just purely, revenge, Armand, because he feels spiteful since the Paris incident, since the incident in Dubai? Is there some bigger plan here? I guess he also said he doesn't want the Great Conversion. He's scared of the Great Conversion, so getting rid of Lestat would obviously stop or curtail that, right? Because now the Great Conversion doesn't have their leader in Lestat, because all these vampires are here to see him at the concert, and they've motivated and inspired all these vampires to proliferate and create more vampires and to come and to perhaps do the Great Conversion. And Lestat was saying how, like, he wrote the anthem for it. It's up to the vampires to do what they will. He feels a little bit like distant from it. He doesn't feel like he's very culpable for the Great Conversion about to happen. But Armand sees it as more like maybe Lestat is being reckless, right? And like, better to kill him before the big vampire conversion. But the thing is that, like, killing Lestat for real this time, that will make him a martyr, right? And so maybe that will actually encourage the vampire rebellion even more, the vampire conversion. So I don't know if that's the best. Armand is really thinking straight here. Is the best. I don't think he's the best planner, manipulator that he thinks he is. But we'll see where that ends up, because I feel it's definitely gonna go wild next episode, I imagine. And we saw a preview of the future in episode 1 at the auction, which which is kind of, you presume that Lestat is gone and dead, and that's why his stuff is being auctioned. But then we see, of course, Armand, and we see Louis, is surviving, but with grave injury. Armand has missing an eye, and Louis is missing a leg. But then we do see Louis there, so of course we know that our favorite couple here are gonna survive, right? If Louis survives this, and Lestat is definitely gonna survive this too, right? Because Lestat is, he has the blood of Akasha in him, so he has to, if Louis survives, then Lestat will survive. So, but how are they gonna do it? I mean, in the books, right? From my understanding, of course, I'm still like in the middle of the Vampire Lestat book, but from my understanding, there's different ways that you can kill vampires. I think the best way is to like burn them up and spread the ashes so the ashes can't come back together. But if you behead a vampire, if the head can be reattached to the body, then the vampire can survive. So, but in this universe, in the show adaptation, pretty much we've seen Louis chop up heads, in Paris with the vampire coven, the theater vampires. We've seen him when he was on when he killed Bruce and the other vampires there. He pretty much just chopped heads and left them, and just we assume that Louis assumes that that's it, that they're dead. Once he chopped the heads off. So that's the indication here that there's no way for them to survive. And so typically, right? But obviously something's going to happen. So what could happen? Could a friendly vampire nearby just come on by and plop their heads back on their necks? Or is the blood of Akasha dripping around powerful enough to use that some kind of, so they can use some kind of telekinetic power to put their heads back on? Maybe Lestat will be able to put his head back on, make his body grab his head in this tragic moment, and this will kind of prove to Louis that yeah, Lestat still loves Louis, and he'll put Louis's head back on. I guess that something like that could happen. Where's Akasha right now? Like we saw last episode that, of course, he was keeping Akasha as the keeper of the great ones or whatever, but that was back in like the 1900 exactly, and but where is she now? Is she who's keeping Akasha now? He's no longer the keeper. Marius, like I imagine he's not back to it, because he handed over to Lestat. Who did Lestat hand it over to? Maybe we'll see some of that flashback coming up. What about Gabriella? That's the other major vampire in this story that isn't around at this moment, but she could probably be following them. If Gabriella is jealous of Louis, she could be sneaking about, behind some tree or bush somewhere, and and of course she wants the great conversion. That's part of her. That's why she is managing the whole tour now, because she wants the vampire stuff. She wants to be she probably wants to be the queen of the vampires, and have vampire be the prince of darkness. So it's like maybe she'll be coming around to put on Lestat's head back on his body, and then that's gonna be okay. I'm just speculating everything, and then that's the moment where Lestat and Gabriella have this fight. It's like, oh, I guess thanks for saving me, but we can't be together anymore. This is weird. You're my mom, and he chooses Louis, and he tries to put Louis's head back on. Then Gabrielle, tries to stop him, and then they have this thing, and then the great conversion starts happening. I don't know. So, but they actually probably have to get back to the concert. I imagine they're gonna have to do with the concert in the woods next episode. I haven't seen any of the next on previews, of course, but they're gonna have to get there. I feel like they'll they won't have the great. I think the confrontation between Gabriella and and Lestat will probably happen at the concert or something, and that's where all the vampires are going to come up. By that point, I think Louis will be back, with his head. They'll both be back with their heads and their bodies, and then we'll have Akasha appear maybe. I mean, they could be holding off Akasha until next season, officially for the Queen of the Damned season, and they maybe just teased her with the flashback, so that could be a thing. So maybe we won't have Akasha anymore in this season. I don't know. There's so much stuff that could happen, and they're definitely taking creative liberties with the adaptation here. So who knows? Anything can happen. But I'm excited. This is a good episode. I did like this episode. The Claudia thing was well deserved and a long time coming. Though of course I feel like maybe they kind of sped past it a bit too quickly, at the end here, and maybe they relied too much on the shock moment of the heads getting cut off. And the thing is that, like, they kind of the moments with Alex and Armand and Daniel, they kind of left some things out that you would have maybe expected to see, scenes to kind of like fill in the blanks, but of course they did it intentionally, so this could be more of a surprise. So it kind of seems a little bit contrived. And then also we had the flash forward in the beginning, so it's like obviously we know that they're not dead because we see Louis in the future, and so it's like maybe it would have been better not to have the flash forward. But then that's the whole framing device of this season, right? Is having Lestat narrate through the Failures album disc, vinyl records. That's kind of the narration throughout. So we know that of course Lestat has recorded that. So at some point he's going to record that at the later on. So I don't know. It's like, so that's why they wanted to do it. They have a shocking ending here, but it's of course somewhat muted because of the framing device, because of a little bit of the contrivances of withholding some of the moments, particularly with Alex's character. I feel like felt a little off, like intentionally leaving out some story character beats, skipping around his character development, for the sake of this surprise here. I don't know. So I don't know if it worked super well, but overall I did enjoy like I said, the romantic tragedy of Lestat and Louis, because this was a very heavily focused Lestat season, and this kind of just ties it all together, and the relationship between Louis and Lestat that we've been accustomed to follow and enjoy throughout these seasons of the show, and also kind of like ties up, brings together also Louis' story arc of him with the whole Claudia situation and Regina. So this feels like a good conclusion to that, penultimate conclusion, I guess, to the season, with the big bang at next episode for the finale, coming in soon. But yeah, this is nice. It was definitely like, it starts off more like a less chaotic, more like a traditional standard episode. You would, because the previous episodes were a lot more, rock star chaotic, bouncing back and forth between timelines, like almost like stream of consciousness through the perspective of Lestat. So this is more like a nice little bit of a breather, slow down for the big finale to come next week. So yeah, so that was nice. That was episode 6 of Vampire Lestat. Let me know what you think. Are you excited for next time, the finale? I am. I love these vampires, of course, so I'm super excited. But yeah, I'll be here under the moonlight. I'll see you then for the big one. Bye bye.